I'm actually amazed myself because I have yet to kind of meet, the wall, if you if you can call it that.
Sure.
I tried putting in as much as I could to kind of break SketchUp, but it won't break.
Hello and welcome to SketchUp Talk. It's the #1 SketchUp podcast on the entire internet, and you'll hear all SketchUp all the time because you're tuned in to SketchUp Talk. I'm Matt Robinson, and with me, as always, is...
Is that where I'm supposed to say it? This is Aaron Dietz.
Normally you do the intros, so
that's right.
It didn't go quite as smoothly, but...
So yeah, I'm Aaron Dietzen with Matt Robinson. So thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for listening, and what a show we have planned for you today. I'm excited. We're excited. I know our guest is probably excited as well. So
we are, and we're mixing it up. We are recording this season in front of a live studio audience. So it's still remote. We are still remote, but we do have an audience, and we're going to plan on taking questions. It's going to be a fun time. I'm excited.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Always tinkering, always making things better. And having a live audience is just one step beyond. We're always leveling up. Boop, 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 boop.
That's right. Never be satisfied. Always work for more. So our guest today is Hus Folkedal. I'm Folkedal. I actually had to practice that, and I just skipped over it and added an N to it. Folkedal, senior landscape architect at DRMA Architects. Are you familiar with a whole lot of landscape architecture yourself, Matt?
I haven't done any landscape architecture, if that's what you're asking. I've appreciated it, certainly. Whether it is in model form, in sort of render form, or in real life. I love walking through a well-designed landscape. And I especially feel like in lockdown or like during COVID times, being able to get outside and get in a space that's well designed, you really appreciate that outdoor environment, I guess, more than
absolutely
I have in the past.
Yeah, we kind of took the outdoors for granted. And I remember like looking at some pictures of landscape architecture whilst locked inside going, ooh, imagine walking through that without a mask on. That was kind of my daydreaming.
Beautiful
awesome.
Shade, beautiful bushes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, green things. Yeah, it was pretty cool. And now here, this is perfect because we are recording this in the spring of 2021. Things are blooming, sun's coming up. So I think it's the perfect time to get Anders on here. So yeah, do we want to do that? Should we bring Anders up right now? Is
yes.
This it?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senior Landscape Architect at DRMA Architects, Mr. Hus Folkedal.
Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome
Thanks.
to SketchUp Talk. All right, so we threw out the name or the title Senior Landscape Architect. We threw out the name of your company DRMA. But I don't necessarily know that we said what it is you do. So I figure you're probably the best one to describe that. So can you tell us a little bit about what it is you do in a day-to-day?
Yeah, sure. I'm a landscape architect, as you mentioned. So I work with all the outdoor spaces, basically. What's in between the facades, usually in the city, but also also outside the city, basically any outdoor area. And of course, landscape architecture is it's a profession where you can't know everything, and you can't be great at everything because it's a lot to grasp. So my kind of focus is on the 3D and how to work with 3D with landscape architecture in 3D. Yeah.
That's all. And where is DRMA located? Where do you do most of your work?
We're an office in a smaller city in Norway called Drammen, which is kind of in the international scale. It's a small city in Norway. It's a decent city. It's located about 40 minutes west of Oslo, the capital.
Okay.
And we have a lot of projects on close to the city and the southern part of Norway, but we also do projects all over Norway, and have especially been doing some exciting work in the northern parts as well. So
yeah, that's awesome. And I've I did a little background research on the old SketchUp blog there. I know you have some previous SketchUp history there, and it seems like you work on all kinds of scales of projects. Whether it's like kind of huge like entire cityscapes to down to smaller scale projects. And what do you prefer to work on? Do you like working on the kind of smaller, real intimate space, or like the gigantic space, or what's fun for you?
The fun thing is actually switching between scales, because it's I get kind of bored doing the same thing all over. So switching between scales, it's nice, because when you work in the big scale, you can draw, you can paint the large image. And when you do the details, you can really go in and focus on the tiny parts and be very precise. So it's a good mix, I think.
So I almost said to set scale, but that is literally what I want to do with this question, is when you talk about everybody's idea of what a big model is different, right? So when you're talking about a large model, how big are you talking about?
It depends on how much of the context that I put into the model. The biggest project to date is we did a feasibility study. It's in Norway, we call it a parallel project. Because the municipality usually hires up to 3 teams to kind of give a feasibility study on an area. And what they'll do is they'll sit down after they get all the projects to evaluate, and then they kind of pick and choose from all 3. So, I don't know if that is something we just do in Norway, but there's a lot of it going on here, at least. And we did a project in a city called Bodø, which is, we have Tromsø, which is the northern, the biggest city in the north, and then you have Bodø, kind of a little bit more south, and it's I don't know the exact scale, but it's a kind of a decent city on a peninsula, and when you get up to the northern Norway, you have these beautiful mountain ranges, so it made sense to kind of bring in the context as well. So I think that model, I think it was maybe 40 square kilometers.
Ooh.
Yeah, and but of course, a lot of the terrain in the context, it's low res, of course. So or else it would just kill my computer. So that's the clue, to kind of figure out, what are the important part and how much you can add to the context, and so. And the story behind the project is actually that the government in Norway has committed itself to kind of moving the airport, which is close to the city, And when they moved the airport a little bit further away, then the city will have a big area to transform into a new city district. So that was fun.
So was that 40 kilometer squares? Was that a SketchUp model?
Basically, everything I work with is going through SketchUp. So the final model is usually Lumion, and then I import or I break the geometry down into several SketchUp models that I import separately. So when I'm working in the usual model that I'm working in, I try to keep it as small as possible. And then I have a kind of a middle model, which is the context close to the area, which is a little bit more detailed. And I have the vast landscape outside. And sorry.
No, I was just saying. So when you hear people talk about models being too big for SketchUp, you just kind of giggle to yourself and like,
yeah. I mean, I'm actually amazed myself because I have yet to kind of meet, the wall, if you if you call it that.
Sure.
I tried putting in as much as I could to kind of break SketchUp, but it won't break.
Ben, don't break.
I like that. I like hearing that. That's great. And well, obviously, I mean, like you've said, you end up breaking it into smaller pieces depending on the function of what it's going to be. Because I'd imagine I haven't used a whole lot of Lumion, but putting in 20 square or 40 square kilometers and saying just render all of this, probably not going to be that useful. But you do end up breaking. How do you decide like how to break that into chunks? Like what pieces are those, like the key images you need to get, or how does that work out?
Yeah. Well, I basically do it kind of because I think that once you bring in the context, it's so much easier to talk about the project with stakeholders and also to understand yourself kind of what kind of landscape you are working in. Mm-hmm. And the silhouette, it's kind of the most familiar thing that we have. We don't usually pay attention to it, but kind of if you've been away from a place that when you come back, if you have a silhouette, which is, Norway has a lot of silhouettes. I'm guessing you do in Boulder as well.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of when you get back, you kind of you instantly you're reminded, of the area without thinking about it. So that's kind of the thing to kind of try and figure out, how far out do I need to go to kind of catch the silhouette I need for the terrain, and this doesn't have to be very high res, of course. Just need to kind of get the main shapes, very rough, and then. I try to put as much of the context into that model as possible, because you always want to try and reduce the triangles in the end. But I actually find that when it comes to programs like Lumion, it can solve a lot of geometry, but it's usually the textures which are the most difficult parts to handle. So not having good, too big textures also is important.
That feels like that's a balancing act, right? Is you want to get high resolution enough that it looks like what it's supposed to be, and not just like a blurry, if I squint right, it looks like wood or whatever. But at the same time, I've seen people, importing 4K images in SketchUp, and why is my file size so big? Why is my file so slow? Because, you just imported basically every, and the stuff I've seen too. I don't know if you run into this, like what kind of textures you're working with, but I've seen things where people brought in, an enormous file with a picture of concrete. Like, you could have used a gray swatch for this and it would have looked just as good, but you brought in this huge high definition image. So where do you get your images, or where do you get your textures from? Where do you pull those?
No, I subscribe to Substance.
Okay.
And if I'm doing work in Unreal, then I can use the Megascans assets there. And then I usually sometimes I just make them. If they're not supposed to be, this high end, just try to mix and mash it to be kind of tileable if it's kind of far away. And I also try and map out a lot of photos, of building facades as well, to add this familiarity to the project site, because it's not that exciting to see a nice project just with this white box syndrome bordering it.
Well, and we've all seen that, right? The urban planning drawings where it's just a bunch of white boxes, and that's not my town. So that's cool.
So, and I've seen it time and time again. If you kind of spend a little bit effort and time on adding just a few facades of some buildings that stand out or have some kind of characteristics, then that adds a whole lot to the discussion and the understanding of the project. So I highly recommend doing that.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And so for a lot of your visualization stuff, it seems like you're using Lumion or Unreal, doing that kind of real-time sort of engine type visualizations and stuff. Does that save you a lot of time versus the alternative, or do you see new kind of things that are like that you could help communicate better? Where do you see the kind of the real-time or the rendering? It used to be just sit in one view for forever and then eventually get a cool looking image. Now you can do the real-time stuff. Where do you think it's going?
I'm a big fan of real-time. And I never, did much still image rendering. Because I usually, earlier, I usually just used SketchUp. Basically, I added the vegetation and just used SketchUp all the time. But kind of the methodology has evolved. So now I kind of have this workflow where I as soon as I get SketchUp fired up and I get the site inside the model, I just instantly also start Lumion. So I keep them up to date all the time, side by side. Sorry, what was your question again?
Maybe so you're using the real-time stuff. Do you use any VR type stuff, or do you see the value in that? Does that add more communication wise for you for what you're doing versus just using Lumion and the output from that?
No, first off, I remember now what I was going to say. Is that usually we in the office, we try to build, as comprehensive model as we possibly can, because that's also an interesting thing. It's not just we start this project, we draw it out, we kind of know the exact angle we want to shoot. It's kind of a discovery as we evolve the project. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting kind of being on this discovery in Lumion, and suddenly you just find very interesting angles that you can just save. So it's kind of evolves, the details that are put into the model. It evolves with the discovery of the, building the model.
You're kind of exploring your own imagination within the space reveals itself to you sort of through the visualization.
Yeah, it's a discovery. It's a constant discovery. we don't necessarily know where what is the perfect angle. We don't know that until late in the project.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to VR, I am a big fan of VR. I tried it on a client once, actually.
How'd that go?
Huh?
How'd it go?
It went very good, actually, because this is when I had my time in Rambøll before I started in DRMA. So we did a school close to Drammen, and we had a Lumia model, and prior to the meeting I had developed this 360-degree still images. So I just brought this basic Pimax 4K glasses headset, and then we went to the meeting, and I asked him, do you want to have a look inside the school? And he was like, yeah. So it was me. It was kind of the building architect, and it was the client. And he was sitting on the opposite side of the table, looking into the headset, and we were having this screen mirror on the laptop, and he could start having a dialogue with the architect. This office is too small. We should do you think we should put in a window here to open up for the view, etc.? So it was very interesting, super interesting.
Right. It's much easier to get those kind of requests when you're like preliminary designing and not when the wall's already there. So that's great.
And I really had the ambition to kind of drive this VR further. But then everything happened, and I don't think it's the best time to share this headset around the table. So
True.
That is true. Maybe just
very soon. I think very soon we're getting there.
That's actually an interesting question. Like how has your business been impacted over the last year? Because that's and this is timeless. So for those of you who are listening in the future, we are about a year into the pandemic, and things are looking up most places. So hopefully it'll be getting better. But what's the impact been like on your business over this COVID?
It's been good, I think. Of course, we didn't actually need this to happen, but all in all, I think it's worked out for us. I can remember it, just the same day as the Prime Minister in Norway got on television and announced that we were closing down, all the borders and everything. And I had this meeting in the office, and we just got the news, and I was kind of, no, we don't shake, do we? No, we don't shake the hand. And everyone was running to the store, to buy up all this toilet paper and stuff.
Yeah.
But then we've had lots of projects all the time, and we're all over the place. We're digital, like now. If I knew about this crowdcast at work, I wouldn't be that delayed today. But we use Teams, and everything works out fine. So
that's good.
Yeah, and it seems like working at a big architecture firm, and you mentioned you used to work at Rambøll, is that right?
Yeah.
Rambøll, and they're engineering, right?
They're everything you can imagine.
Nice. Yeah. So the projects are huge, the teams are huge, and you're kind of you've worked for both of these companies. And I'm interested to hear, like, using SketchUp versus other teams maybe using other solutions or working together. How do you work around that? Different people using whatever they prefer versus fitting in with your workflow.
Yeah. That's the good thing about SketchUp, is that you can accept lots of different kind of files from different softwares. in my case, I use a combination of CAD and SketchUp, and I found a way to kind of have the interoperability between those two programs. Because I started out with CAD, and then that was the usual workflow, and then I went into SketchUp after drawing up the plan, and I would model the project to show the client. But that kind of changed. Maybe we can get in more to that later, but I can't really just use SketchUp.
Right.
I have to have a civil 3D as well. And then, of course, I use these other programs to render. But then in our office right now, all the architects, they are mainly in Rhino and ArchiCAD. And there's no problem, basically, getting the buildings in to the project. So and then of course sometimes you have Revit and other programs as well, but as long as they don't send the Revit file, everything is good.
Right. Yeah. Keep those to yourself.
Yeah.
Well, that's a question on there. When or how did you start using SketchUp?
I started when I was doing the landscape architecture studies, back in, I think it was 2005 or 6. I remember because the first year during the education, we were not allowed to use computers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was kind of the notion that you have to kind of learn the basics by hand, and then you get into the computer later. So, but I was already interested in 3D. I had just learned a little the ArchiCAD at the time, and I remember we kind of had this in Ås, the Life Sciences University of Life Sciences in Ås. They kind of built this VR lab at the time, which was this kind of curved big screen and with the 3D vision glasses. And I think it was kind of this Eon program software we were using. But I remember I made a model of a high rise. Because the thing was that we were going to make a model, and we were supposed to use the VR lab to show it. And I remember this because I kind of jumped out of the high rise, and then I got
in VR. Everybody, he jumped out in VR.
Yeah, but no, it was not actually VR. It was kind of more a 3D screen effect. But I was told off, don't do that. So I remember it, and I think I developed that model in SketchUp. So that must have been around that time, I think. And it was free at the time, and was something that my fellow students showed me. This, check this out. And I was at the time like, no, I think I stick to ArchiCAD. But I found out that was kind of that was just stupid, because ArchiCAD is not a good program for working with terrain and landscape. So so it made sense to kind of switch. And SketchUp, it's easy to get into. So yeah. And then I made all the stupid mistakes, not grouping or making components, having this chewing gum geometry.
That's funny. Chewing gum geometry.
Yeah, and putting, different lines on different layers and suddenly not finding my edges, etc. So yeah, it was a mess.
Learning the hard way. School of hard knocks.
Yeah, it sticks better when you screw it up yourself. It really sticks a lot better than. I mean, I like to think that you saying that right now helps somebody else not do it, but They
You have to
remember
do it.
better. It's true.
You have to do it. It's the way.
That's right. This is the way. Awesome. Well, are you up for a couple questions? We have a few questions that came in from our guests that I think would be kind of fun to ask.
Sure.
From Sebastian, he was asking what your computer situation is like, because you were saying that you have yet to meet the model that you don't have a problem with performance-wise. So I think he's wondering, like, what's your machines like that you run that on?
Yeah, right now I have a pretty beefy machine. It's a Titan card. So it's stupid of me maybe to say this. I yet to run into a problem because I realized that I'm pretty lucky. So it's the i9 9009 something Intel, the fast one.
Yeah.
And 64 gigs of RAM, I think, and all the good stuff. Yeah.
Well,
Nice.
I don't think it's not stupid to say. I mean, that's a question we hear a lot, right? Is, well, how big of a file can you do? And how big of a file is like saying, how long is a piece of rope, that kind of thing. How much detail is in it? How many images, like you pointed out? So that's always a question that people ask, and there's not just a cut and dry simple answer. But at the same time, that's a big piece too. Is what's your computer like? Because you're going to go buy a low end Dell. You're not going to work on the same machine or not work on the same level of work as you are if you have the high end.
Actually, I want to correct myself, because I just realized now that I have met the goal or the breaking point, if you will, in SketchUp, and that was when I tried to import this drone model. Yeah, that was I don't know how many millions of polygons that was, but I just had to kind of quit SketchUp. So that was the edge. But seriously, just you keep the model sharp, purge, remove anything you don't need. If you're using a different rendering software, split the model up. Keep detailed models for small details separate. Just make sure you kind of coordinate the origin. So I use copy paste in place, in between models all the time.
That's good stuff. Paste in place is way underrated.
Yeah, good point. And you really have to work at it from both sides. You have the big, huge, beefy computer that'll help you out, but also modeling smarter and kind of only having what you need in there, and controlling visibility and keeping file size down and everything helps you out immensely as well. So
awesome.
I did kind of this blog post, I think, with some of your colleagues earlier about this. So.
Yeah, we can add that to the show notes too. If you're interested and you're listening or watching, you can check that out in the links.
Yeah.
So it does sound like Joseph is ready to come on stage, so we're going to send the invite over to him.
Let's do that.
Okay, here we go.
All right, come on down, Joseph Kim. Rolling the dice with the technology, but it's got to work.
Pushing it. We're pushing what you can do with technology right now.
We're trying to find the edge.
Edge work for me.
The good news, it says accepted and connecting, so we're on our way.
Keep pushing it.
And don't start OBS before you're inside.
Good tip.
Hey,
welcome.
Hey, Joseph.
Right.
Welcome to SketchUp Talk.
Yeah, well, thank you so
Look at your
much.
setup.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to get all of this ready just for you guys.
You cleaned up the whole room just in that time?
Very clean.
Super speed, love it.
All right. Go ahead. Ask Anders whatever you want.
Well, my question was, what are your favorite extensions when doing the landscape designs?
I'm a big fan of Profile Builder. That is kind of like for me that is SketchUp on steroids, because working with landscape, there's a lot of linear features, sometimes often repetitive as well, like roads, piers, retaining walls, etc., and also terrain slopes, side terrain slopes. So discovering a Profile Builder was kind of huge for me. And once I realized that this was a plugin, I was very excited, because you can actually make a pretty decent library of even road sections with fully furnished with lamp posts and planters and everything ready to go. And if you combine that with spline segments, you can really speed up your modeling. So that is my best tip: splines and Profile Builder.
You're getting a lot of backup from the comments too. People are definitely agreeing that Profile Builder is good stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing. So that's the best plugins.
Awesome.
And also through Paint, because I do a lot of visualization, and I try to texture my models, as I model, not afterwards, because then it becomes this impossible task. So through Paint, it's also very good for curved geometry.
That's great, because that's where you don't have to worry about the individual pieces, the different faces getting individually textured. And anybody who's using any kind of curved geometry, if it's not a big rectangle that you're throwing a texture onto, should take a look at Through Paint, because that is an awesome solution for you get just a lot of options on how you want to lay textures down onto geometry.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Cool.
Does that answer your question, Joseph?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you for all of that info. I always
You're
struggle
welcome.
with landscape designs whenever I try to do terrains and everything. I really struggled. So,
But you know what? Just drawing triangles will get you a big way.
absolutely.
Triangle on triangle on triangle, and you can be very rough about it as well. You can refine it, but if you want to just have a mock-up terrain, start drawing triangles.
Mm-hmm.
So just to tag on to Joseph's question about extensions, Sebastian's wondering if you've ever tried Scatter for vegetation placement.
I might have, but that's not something I use. I actually don't put vegetation in my Sketcher models.
Okay.
You rely on Lumion.
Yeah, so I model kind of the surfaces. So once I bring it into Lumion, I have areas of soil, and I start doing the vegetation in Lumion instead.
And that goes back to what you're saying, which is modeling for the purpose of what if your end goal is that rendered image, then if it's more productive to put the vegetation in Lumion, then that obviously makes more sense. So
yeah.
And John is wondering if you've tried any of Chuck Valley's plugins. Chuck is Valley Architecture, has a bunch of a suite of extensions for creating architecture and landscape.
Is it like the instant plugins?
Yeah, instant, yeah.
Insta, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't tried them. I was wondering at the time if I should, try out the Insta Road, but I didn't for some reason, and now I feel that with this method that I talked about earlier with Profile Builder. I don't feel that I need that, and I can't remember, the other ones, but it was no, I don't know. I don't use them, but
That's all right.
I've looked at them. I looked at them.
There's quite a bit of a overlap between Profile Builder and Insta Road, and Profile Builder, I understand, has a bit more capabilities in terms of repetition of elements, so it could be more useful.
There you go. Multiplying out productivity. That's a plus.
Bingo.
Awesome. Looks like Larry has a question. If we want to have him try to come on.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Joseph, for coming on and asking your question. We appreciate you being part of SketchUp Talk.
Well, thank you for inviting, and this is just so fun.
Nice. Thanks. Yeah.
All right, Larry's
Beautiful.
up for coming on and asking a question. It's interesting that because I was thinking the same thing, because I was thinking of Chuck Valley's. He has instant road and he's got like instant curb, fence. I can't remember. There's so many, but that was exactly one of the ones that I was thinking about. I'm like, wonder if that's something that he's ever played with. But you're right. If you have Profile Builder, you basically have that tool to take geometry and trace it off a long line. So
the other thing that I wish for is kind of to have control over the steepness, the slope or the steepness of the center line.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah. Hey, Larry, welcome to
How's it
SketchUp
going,
Talk.
everybody?
Pretty good. You want to go ahead and ask your question of Anders?
My question stems from me being a teacher and teaching at community college, all the different programs that some of them that we've talked about. My question to you is, do you find it difficult with all the programs that are out there to work with other people all the time? Maybe what are the problems you get when you bring in data from other programs into SketchUp? And is there anything you don't like about SketchUp? I always ask that strange question to my students. What don't you like about the program? What don't you like about it? It's a good question to ask, because there are some things I know everybody would like SketchUp to do more of, or even less of sometimes. But how about you, when you come across your projects, is there anything you don't like about it? And working with all those different programs, what are some of the problems?
Yeah, great question. I'm a little bit of a computer geek, so I kind of I don't find it very hard to kind of work between programs. I usually find a solution. If there is something that I just can't manage to import, there's usually even a third program that I can import it into and then export it again. So I usually work around it in that way. Sometimes there is kind of these files that you just that is native to for example Revit or 3D Studio. Then if I receive those kind of files, just have to write back or get on the phone and just ask. And I think that's also important when you kind of collaborate with other professionals. Try to kind of in a nice way ask them if you see kind of potential for them to export their geometry in a way that benefits you. I think that's a good thing also for the client, that you don't spend a lot of time constantly getting these files that you have to tidy up. If there is kind of a way to export it differently, that's a huge time saver. So that's important, I think.
I feel like an important thing you touched on too there is that communication. I think everybody, I mean, obviously we want work to be as quick and easy as we can possibly get it for ourselves, because that's a better place to be. But I think people are looking for, that one file format that eliminates corresponding or questions and I don't know that waiting for that perfect file format is better than communication and actually talking to each other. And granted, I spend most of my day talking at people, so maybe I'm biased, but I really feel like that getting information back and forth is ideal and something we need to hold on to and do more of. So I just wanted to key in on that because I think that is a big part of working collaboratively is actually collaborating.
That's very true with communication. You have to communicate in a project sometimes with cities and individuals at the cities that may or may not be computer savvy or want to see it in color, want to see all the details, some want to see it only in 2D, and there's other people that want to see it in 3D with color. And that's been my biggest struggle with working with clients is trying to give them what they want. And the key, honestly, Aaron, you're right. It is having communication in the beginning of a project and try to ask those hard questions in the beginning to have some kind of structure to work with down the road that will eliminate those problems or at least minimize them or mitigate them in some way, just to really make the flow of work to go better. And that's where I've come across with SketchUp. It's a lot simpler to show that. And that's where my benefits come from. But I do struggle sometimes with the other programs. You mentioned Revit and CAD and other programs that you bring into SketchUp. There's some form of cleanup that has to be done in either SketchUp or Revit before you get it into SketchUp, and then even afterwards. And that's been the biggest, hardest problem for me and some of my clients, as well as my students in my classroom, when they get kind of that, they're walking that fence. They want SketchUp to do everything, and then they realize it's not going to do everything with, by itself. It sometimes needs help or other data from other programs, and then you got to fix that data. So it's, once again, Aaron, you're right. Communication is the key. That is the big key to me.
It is.
But thank you, guys. I appreciate the answer. That was a good answer.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on stage, Larry.
Yeah, thanks, Larry.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think we're getting to that point where we're hitting time. I'm getting flagged by our producer. She's sending me the digital, hand across throat part. Yeah. So, Anders, we got to say thank you so much for coming on. This has been great. I learned. Granted, this is something that I personally was a little naive about, and I have learned quite a bit on what to consider when we're thinking about things like large scale landscape design. Is there any last points you want to throw out there? Anything you want to say before we turn this over or wrap this up?
No, I just want to thank you for having me on. That's super exciting. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been great having you. Thank you so much. And, the audio medium is maybe not everything to communicate what you do. So check out the show notes for blog posts or other imagery from Anders' projects, because they're absolutely astounding, especially the Lumion, like huge models. I'm like, oh my gosh, these are beautiful. So yeah, great work. And thank you so much for joining us on SketchUp Talk. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Great. Well, all right. We will wrap it at this point. Hey, Matt, you brought us in. You want to take us out?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll say from everybody here at SketchUp to all of you out there listening, we appreciate you being part of the community. And thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
This has been a Trimble Media production. Thank you for listening to SketchUp Talk. If you liked what you heard here today and you have an idea for an episode or a guest, you can drop us an email at podcast@sketchup.com. If you have a specific question related to how to do something in SketchUp, check out our forum at forums.sketchup.com. Thank you.